In this episode, Susan Grau shares her experiences with near-death, mediumship, and the loss of close family members to suicide. These topics are discussed with compassion and insight, but may be emotionally intense for some listeners. Please take care while listening.
One day, I go, I'm done with this. And it was right when Facebook came out. And I said, I'm a medium. I talk to what you call dead people. And if you don't want to be my friend, and I did this whole thing, this big, huge drama. It was so funny now that I look back. But at the time, it was really serious. And I pressed that button and I started sobbing from relief.
Hello, welcome to Impact the World, where today I am delighted to welcome Susan Grau. Susan is the author of a new book called Infinite Life, Infinite Lessons. But what's so fascinating to me about her work is that she has been working as a medium for 15 to 20 years. But prior to that, she was a therapist for grief and for addiction. And her journey with spirit began very early in life when, at the age of 4.5, she had a near-death experience. So it has been an absolute delight to have the conversation with Susan that you're about to witness. And you can find Susan's book and any of her work at her website, which is susangrau.com. As usual, we will put all the details in the show links, but if you're interested in near-death experiences, the afterlife, mediumship, or grief, this is going to be a beautiful conversation for you to listen in on. Enjoy. Susan, welcome to the show. It's really lovely to meet you because I wasn't familiar with you or your work until a few weeks ago, and what I've seen and what I feel in your presence is just lovely. So thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
And congratulations on your first book, which is here. It's called Infinite Life, Infinite Lessons. And I believe that in July, which I think is when this show is going to air, it's just coming out in paperback too.
Yes, I'm excited.
So this book has a lot in it, but it starts at the beginning of your journey with your near-death experience. So if you don't mind, I would be curious if you would share a little with us about what happened to you at such a young age and how it began your journey with spirit.
Absolutely. Well, I have to say, prior to this happening, when animals would cross, I would see them floating. And I was only 3. It's probably the only thing I remember about being 3 years old, but it touched me. And I didn't really understand that they had crossed, or crossed is not a good word, but they went, dimensionally to a different frequency. I didn't understand that. And then, but it was just my normal. But what happened to me was that I was playing with some boys. We were playing fort, and I wanted to keep playing. And they said if I crawled up in the freezer in the garage and got popsicles, that they would let me keep playing with them. And of course, I'm almost 5. I'm tipping close to 5, and not recognizing it wasn't plugged in. They opened up the garage door, which I couldn't do on my own. So no one ever worried about bolting it down, although my mother should have. And I climbed up in, and I'm calling out flavors, you want pink, you want purple, and I'm being a little girl, and I hear the door close, and I'm facing inward. And I remember feeling like, surely they're not gonna keep me in here. This is part of the game, basically, is what I thought. And then I heard the garage door thud, and I innately knew that I was not gonna be okay, that something bad was gonna happen. And I think I knew that I was going to leave my body, like die, whatever you want to call it, transition. But I don't know how I knew that, because I really had not been around that except for with the animals, and they didn't really go anywhere. They were in front of me, so I didn't really understand. And then I started screaming, and the garage was separated from our house by quite a distance. And there was a fence in the middle and a work area, and my mom was in the back of the house, and she heard a scream, and she thought it was just the cats, in heat or whatever they, do on land. And I remember just feeling this high-pitched scream. My mom said it was the highest pitched scream, and that's the sound of terror. And I know that today, and I just started screaming as loud as I could, and I saw these 3 lights after a while, and they said, "Stop screaming." And I was kind of stunned, so I kept screaming. And they said, Susie, one said, Susie, stop screaming. We're going to get your mommy. And I kind of felt like it was but first, but I didn't hear that. And the next thing I knew, I did not look back at my body. And the children I work with who have near-death experiences, they tell me they don't see their bodies. I think it's too terrifying. And the next thing I knew, I was at the bottom of a stairway, and it was cracked and old and very Greco-Roman or Roman Greco, room. It was beautiful, but I didn't understand that then. Was in front of me at the top of the stairs, and it had pillars, and it was all cracked, and it's like cracked cement, but beautiful. And it had an open ceiling. And I just knew that I needed to get up there, and I didn't know how I was going to do it, because I was me, but I didn't feel like me physically necessarily. I didn't know what I felt like. I just was like jello-y, that kind of feeling. And boom, I was on the edge of this well. And I studied under Raymond Moody, and he said to me, because I said, I never saw a tunnel. How come everybody sees a tunnel and I didn't get to see a tunnel? And he said, maybe you ever thought the well was your tunnel? I was stunned, and that was recent. But I saw this movement inside this tunnel, and it was twisting and turning like what I would call DNA today. And it was words, and it was one consciousness. And I was hearing things like, my mom's got cancer, God, please don't let her die. And I'm going to get a new car. If my dad will get me one, I'm turning 16, please make him get me a car, God. And all these, what I called prayers, moving in unison as one consciousness, coming through this tunnel towards me. And I looked at these three lights, and I said, do you answer all those? And they said, no, Susie, sometimes what people desire the most isn't good for them. I didn't like hearing that because I didn't understand it. And the next thing, I was just on this beautiful, I called it the Yellow Brick Road because I'd seen The Wizard of Oz. And it was this beautiful path, and it had pyramids at the beginning of it. And there were pavers that developed these beautiful pyramids. And there were humans taking from the bottom of these pyramids, these pavers, and paving their path. And I somehow knew innately that was their life journey, and they were unbalancing it because they were pulling from the bottom. And they were paving this path, and they were crying out to somebody, for the love of God, please help me. Nothing's going my way. Nothing ever works out for me. I don't want to be here. Just really sad things. And then they were gone. And I watched these angelic beings come in and remove the pavers and put them back in the bottom. And they went to the top of these beautiful pyramids, and they pull a paver off, and it would recreate itself. And I don't know what that meant exactly, but now today, I think I realized that was like a continuum. It's infinite, hence the name of the book, Infinite. And then they started paving the path, and I said, what are you doing? And I know they put these questions in me. And they said, we are the pavers, you are not. All you have to do is walk it. And at some point in this whole thing, I said, how do you know if you're walking it right? Typical kid. And they said, we bless and block everything. Make no mistake, you can get through a block battered and bruised at best, or you can shift. And if there's another wall, shift again, and another wall, shift again. And before you know it, we'll be paving your path. What you run from chases you, and what you try to control controls you. I never forgot it. I've said it my whole life. I controlled everything my whole life. I didn't listen, but I never forgot the words.
Yeah.
And people ask me, how do you remember all these details? And I say, do you remember The Wizard of Oz? Do you remember the ruby slippers? Do you remember the color of, Dorothy's hair? Oh, yeah, I remember all that stuff. And I say, that had an impact on you. This had a true impact on me. And I was meant to remember. And then I flashed into the room of knowledge. Every dimension, everything you can imagine is in that room. Everything you've ever done, seen, heard, felt, experienced that was necessary for your soul to take with it. And I didn't know that then. And then these books, they were there, and I saw this family, and they were kind of calculating what they wanted to do on their journey. And I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do that. And I'm going to try this, and my soul's going to expand, and it's going to grow. And then I'm going to go over here. And I think they meant a different place, not Earth. then I'm going to go over here and I'm going to do this and that. And they said, oh, no, that's a lot to handle. That's way too much to take on. And they said, but you do have free will. And this little girl was talking. She kept saying, I know I can do it. I know I can do it. And they said, well, you do have free will. And boom, they were gone. And I watched another set of other entities coming in. I guess they were entities. And I said, where did they go? And they said they went to their next incarnation. I had no idea what they were talking about. I was about 11 years old when someone said, do you believe in reincarnation? I go, there's that word. What? And I had never heard the word. And I knew what the word was, but I didn't know what it meant. Still, I had to look and check. But to know what the word is was kind of shocking. And then I traveled to other places. So that was probably the most important one, because I knew the room of knowledge, which people call the Akashic records. For me, it's the room of knowledge. It forever will be. And then I was in this beautiful, with the room of companions. And I want to say this, they didn't call it rooms, I did. It was a place. It wasn't even a place, it was an energy. But I don't know how to describe it in human terms, so I say the rooms. And I remember them telling me something different than that word, but I don't remember the word. So it was it was like a dimensional place. I don't remember the word. But anyway, I saw our animals and beautiful, beautiful, welcoming of animals there, and they were happy and running around. And then I was just in this open field, and there were dandelions and daisies, but there were colors I'd never seen in my life. And I looked to my left, and there was this beautiful mountain with this bean on it. And I wanted to get up that mountain so bad. I'm so sorry, I'm going to cry. I wanted to get up that
Please
mountain so bad, but I couldn't. But it came to me. It was like a beam of love that came into my body, and I was everything, and I was nothing, and I was perfection. And it was this beautiful light beam. It was all love. It was pure love. And then I looked to my left, and this beautiful floating angel came towards me. And I thought, I want to float. That's all I could think of. I want to float. I hope I get to float. I probably was, but I didn't know it. And she said, it's time to go. And I was by water. And she said, we are birthed through water, and you'll return through water to your mommy. And my mom was hearing the whole time, your baby's in the freezer. And I remember seeing my mom and saying, I'm in the freezer, and I could see her move. I think that was my first introduction to mediumship, honestly, because I saw her respond, but she wasn't listening to what I was saying or anybody else. And then she heard it really loud. And I wanted to argue with him. I wasn't sure I wanted to be there because I wanted to be with my mommy, but I wasn't sure I wanted to go back either, because they told me I was going to be doing some difficult things on my journey, and I would help people heal. They didn't say healer. I would help people heal. And I didn't know what they meant, but I heard the difficult part. And then I finally stepped into this water. It was this beautiful warm bath of cleansing. And when they said, the water is cleansing, I thought they meant they were cleaning me up because I was in the field. So I was already going back into my human thought patterns at that point. And then my mom said she heard it really loud. She went out, opened the garage door, and she said she almost didn't because she knew I couldn't open the garage door. And she said she did, and she opened it up, and she spun me around, and I was ashen and gray, and there were no cell phones. There were no way to get help. So she dropped me. She let me go, and she went running for a phone because phones were plug-ins. And I fell, and I cracked open my jaw. I still have the scar. I'll never get rid of it. And I took a breath, and it took me quite some time to get well and feel like myself. And but when I opened my eyes, I could see spirits all around me. I thought they were the boogeyman. I didn't think they were there to hurt me, but I thought they were the boogeyman, and I didn't quite understand. Like, I'm feeling like they're the boogeyman, but they're not hurting me. And they just were everywhere. And they were talking to me, but it was like whispers and mumbles. I couldn't understand them, but I could see them with my eyes. And I was scared. And I would cover my head and say, go away, go away. And they didn't. And they were trying to teach me. And I didn't understand that. And then I finally became my abnormally normal life. And that's the story. And I became a therapist and started working with grief and addiction to help people heal.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. I didn't want to leave where you were.
So beautiful.
No. And I didn't have an experience that was triggered like yours, but I've had 2 experiences in my life where oneness has just become my experience, and it didn't last very long, but exactly as you described, being everything and nothing and part of everything and no longer defined. I mean, it's extraordinary.
We'll be right back to the conversation in just a moment, so stay tuned.
London, are you ready for energy mastery? Who here likes the idea of a little bit of gentleness after the last few months? Yeah, me too.
Embrace your power and transform your life over a weekend of cosmic connection and soul expansion with Lee Harris.
When you come together with a focused intent to increase your energy mastery, and you do that with a group of people, incredible amplification happens.
Join us for channeled wisdom, grounded teaching, soul-infused music with Devor Bozique, community participation, and connection.
You never know who's going to show up, you never know what's going to be asked, you never know what's going to be focused in the room. It's the beauty of being live with each other that is its own co-creative mystery.
Energy Mastery with Lee Harris, September 13th and 14th in London. Limited seating, reserve now.
I love that you bring up that you were a grief and addiction therapist, because you were introduced to me, you were recommended to me. I had a feeling about you. I went to watch a video to get a sense of who you were, and I was watching you and I was like, she's a medium, but she seems like some of my favorite therapist friends. She's got that, for me, there's something that a good therapist has, which is, I think because they have sat with so much, there is a steadiness and a calm and a spaciousness and an ability to be unfazed by whatever is sent their way. And, you know, I've met mediums who are very gifted, but when I saw you, I was like, oh, that's interesting. One of my first questions about you was, is she a therapist? Was she a therapist?
So funny.
And then I think in the same video I was watching, we got to a point where you talked about working with addiction and working with grief. And I was like, okay, but what a perfect combination. So my guides, the Z's, talk a lot about grief, and they call grief the great transformer. And so,
As do I.
right. Oh, interesting.
I
Okay.
say pain is our greatest motivator to change, and it is our greatest teacher. It's equal in value to joy, except for I think pain teaches us more.
Right.
You know, we want to expand, we want to grow, we want out. Just our humanness wants out of the pain, so we're going to do anything we can to grow and expand beyond it. And so it's a huge, huge teacher for us.
Well, and even I, listening to your experience, your near-death experience and everything you were experiencing, when we were there, I was so loving it. And then when we started to come back, I felt, we got to come back to the,
I know.
it's so true. The expansive states are beautiful and wonderful and easy. But at the same time, the Z's always say that often in grief, your world looks like it becomes very slow because you don't engage, you pull back. And they say the fastest, most intense transformation is going on for you, even on the days where you feel like nothing is happening because of that chrysalis that you're put into. So what took you in the direction of, I'm going to work with grief and addiction as a therapist?
So my Nana died, and she came to me, and she started speaking to me, and I didn't know she died. And the next morning, it was so intense. And the next morning I got the call that she died. So I was kind of panicked because it was so real. It was so beyond anything because she was personal to me that I called UCLA Medical Center. They were studying ESP, extrasensory perception. And I told them what was happening to me, and whoever was on the phone with me, it could have been a secretary, but they said, oh, you sound like someone we would call like a medium or, and I said, what's that? And they said, those are people who talk to the dead. And I freaked because first of all, I don't see death. That's not, we're not dead. We're more alive there than here. 100%. This is a dream to me. But also it just, like what? So I hung up the phone and I didn't speak of it. But what happened is that my whole family had addiction. I lost both my brothers and my mother to suicide. And I wanted to help people. Now, at that time, I hadn't lost my mother, but one of my brothers had tried already 4 times. So I was very involved in the grief of that. Waiting for the phone call is what you do. You're every time the phone rings, you're in shock over having had those conversations when the phone rang before. And I just made a decision that addiction was something I needed to look at and really I understood it. I was going to Al-Anon, I was trying to help people, and I understood the family dynamics, so I worked with the families a lot. And then I ultimately ended up working with the addict themselves. But I understood it as an escape, an escape from whatever it is they don't want to face and what they're afraid of. And then ultimately, substances are addicting. So they end up, addicted to it. But they start out wanting to just escape or feel part of or fit in. Why weren't they feeling like they fit in? Why didn't they feel they were part of? So I got very involved in that. And then I started working with grief because when you're working with addiction, you're going to have a lot of loss. Mm. And then I started having my losses. And so it just expanded from there. But how I ended up doing mediumship was I actually didn't even use it as a business at all during this time because years ago, they would have taken my license and locked me out.
They're very strict, with, and that's fair enough.
Yeah. So what would happen is I'd say things like, I think we didn't call it PTSD at the time, but just for an example, your PTSD comes from the fact that you tried to revive your grandmother when she had a stroke and you couldn't, and you were just a child. And they go, I didn't tell you that. And I wouldn't know the difference between reality and what I was hearing from the spirit world. And they go, it's true, but I didn't tell you that. And that started to happen over and over. And I would just be shocked, but I wasn't authentic because I couldn't say, I know. So I would, I'm sure you did, or maybe I heard it from someone else, just try to cover my tracks. And that didn't feel good.
Yeah.
So ultimately I ended up just allowing myself to do that work, and they would tell a friend and they'd tell a friend and so on, or a family member. And it just expanded from there. But I still didn't do it for a living until about 15, 20 years ago. I started actually allowing myself to say, I'm a medium. Because it wasn't my own identity. I had other identities inside of me, a therapist and a human, and a person that, an empath. And I have my doctorate in divinity. And that's where I studied under Raymond. And I work with children when I can come across them that have near-death experiences. So I had a lot of other things I did. And so I didn't want to be labeled. And so I kept it inside. And then Facebook came out, and one day I go, I'm done with this. And it was right when Facebook came out. And I said, I'm a medium. I talk to what you call dead people. And if you don't want to be my friend, and I did this whole thing, this big, huge drama. It was so funny now that I look back. But at the time it was really serious. And I pressed that button and I started sobbing from relief. I was relieved to be authentic and just be me. And if you don't like me and love me, that's okay. Not everyone's going to love us. We hope that they will, but they're not. No. And that's just reality. And I don't like that part of reality, but it's part of reality. And that was it. I started doing the work.
I love it because I think anyone listening who identifies as either a medium or an intuitive or a channeler, I think that's such a common story for so many of us. My biggest concern of coming out as a channeler was that was the box certain people wouldn't be able to get around in order to meet the other parts of me that were and are very alive and well. Like, I'm still shocked now these days when someone goes, "Oh, you're a channeler," and I'm like, "That's part of what I do." And that's always been a part of what I do. But yeah, I'm a healer. I'm a creator. There are so many other boxes, and then I'm a human, and all the things. But and I wonder if it's because in our time, I feel like our generation right now, we're supposed to help normalize some of this and make it so that in 20, 30 years, if someone hears the word channeler or medium, they're just like, "Oh yeah, yes, that's Sally. She's also a medium," and all the. Just to kind of, because there is a bit of a in society about it. I think a fear, I think a programmed fear. Very programmed through certain religions. Even in my own life, my ex-husband had a relative who didn't know what I did for years, and we were married, and then was going to come and visit us, and then found out that I was a channeler, and because of this relative's religious, wouldn't come to our house. And I was so shocked, because to me it was such a, but fair enough, this is the world we live in.
Yes.
So for you, that was a liberating moment and a release.
Yeah.
And from there on, the people who come to you, are they coming to you with the understanding that you are a therapist who can help them work with the grief, or are they coming because of the shiny object of medium? Because that's its own thing. And I just want to make a distinction. There are very gifted mediums who are helpful just because they are gifted mediums. And then there's someone like yourself who actually is educated around the grief process and can hold space for what someone's going through.
I think it's both.
Right.
So like you just said, I think it's both. And I think that they start out in their grief, they don't recognize that they're going to a medium to heal grief. And so when they walk in my room, I'm already holding space for that. And I'm understanding that they are in grief. And that's why I say you have to study grief to be a good medium. That's just my belief system. And I honor everyone else's belief system, but it's very strong in me. And because of the fact that they're not coming because they're happy. Now, I've had a few people come that just want to come for the fun of it, but I'm a healer. So I don't really resonate in that energy. And as you know, the energy we put out brings the energy to us that we need.
Yeah.
And it also leads us to the energy we need. And so people who come to me usually need help.
And you also mentioned working, I just want to pivot a little bit because you said something earlier that pricked up my ears. Working with children who've had NDEs, near-death experiences, that's fascinating and not anything I've heard of before, but boy, is there a need for it, because actually you are one of multiple people in my life who had near-death experiences as a child, not necessarily as an adult. So what is that process like when you meet a child?
It's so interesting because I get such a different gamut, and there aren't a lot of them, so I don't get to do it all the time. But when I do, I had one child who had a very horrific loss, a near death, and we know that spirit kept them alive because they were bleeding from their head, and their father did it. And he was terrified, just absolutely terrified whenever his father would come to him. And he thought his father was there to hurt him again. And he couldn't get his brain around what was happening and what he was witnessing and seeing and having nightmares. So they brought him to me. So
his father did this deliberately to him? This was,
yes.
Okay.
Yes, his father shot him in the head. And this is the thing, you get shot in the head, you're good, and his grandma didn't come for almost 24 hours because they didn't know, and he was alive. And so he told me, my dad held the spot so I wouldn't bleed to death, so I could be saved. His dad was gone. Yeah. He died instantly. He did it from the spirit world. The power of that's just mind-blowing to me, but that's how he viewed it being saved. And I taught him about why the spirit world comes, and that they are love, and love is the highest vibrational energy in existence. And that he was there to love him and explain to him and make amends to him, and, everything, on kid level I was talking. And he got through his nightmares and his fear. So that was like powerful for me.
So his father shot him and then presumably shot himself and instantly died, but then immediately from the spirit world saved his son, helped save his son. Wow.
Yes. And his son knew his dad told him, I'm going to hold this so you're not going to bleed until your grandma comes, which I don't remember his grandma's name, but said her name. And he was really, really gifted from it. Like he just, I think we're all gifted, but it just expanded it, being on the verge of, near death is near death, whether you stop breathing, whether it's an out-of-body experience, OBE, out-of-body experience, whatever it is, you're still on that cusp, that preface of, that shift. And your spirit knows that. So whether or not he passed away while he was laying there is insignificant. He had a NDE, and it was quite powerful. And he saw his grandfather and all kinds of things. It was really cool to listen to him. But helping him heal the fear, because I didn't have any. Well, my mom and my sister and my brother had this gift, and to some degree, and yet my mother, they had put her away. Hence, she wasn't listening when the spirit world was telling her I was in the freezer. They had her medicated. Valium was the big medication for, and she was afraid not to take it because they had locked her up.
Right.
And when you are in that space of growth and change, when you are afraid, when you don't understand what's happening and coming to you, whether it be we're human, or we're in our spirit realm, our spirits are trying to reach us. And this little boy was trying to be reached. So regardless of how they reached him, they did. But he was in that fear base, and I was in the fear base, and that was where I was headed. I was in a fear base. I didn't understand who these spirits were, and yet I knew. And when I was there, which I don't share this very often, I understood music to be our healer, because the angels, or the entities that I called angels, when they speak, the words and the music come out at the same time. And I asked why, and they said that music was what they created to help us heal. And they said, when you hear music, you'll go back to your memories, you'll go back to crying if you need to, or laughter. It will bring back everything you need and put it right in front of you, drop it right in your lap. If you choose to pick it up and heal with it, it will do that. And so we created it for you. And so I would always hear music in the background. So then I knew they were there. And so I wasn't quite as scared.
Wow. Okay. Now, you know how when ping moments go off, I just had a whole series of those because the Z's, my guides, told me that they got me first through music. I didn't hear them until I was 23, but they said I did hear them until I was 6. And much like you, I have a very vivid childhood memory of the only one recurring dream I've ever had in my life, which involved walking downstairs in the house I lived. And I vividly recall this male figure and female figure on either corner of the room, and they were trying to tell me something, but all I could hear was television static, like the old, when it would go off at night. And that was them. And I realized that was the time that they disappeared, or the time that they said it would no longer have been convenient for my life to stay with me because of what I was about to go through, and it would have caused problems. I heard them again at 23, and then years later they told me at 21 the reason I started writing songs and music, because I would literally hear melody and lyrics the same way I do today. That's how they got the channel open first. So it's funny, this morning I was working on a song that called Sound, that we're redoing from years ago, and the lyrics are all about in sound we will return, to sound we do return, and how sound envelops us and will hold us when we need it to. And absolutely. It's just funny to hear you.
It's amazing. If you want to be cracked open, we have to be, because we have shells around us.
Yeah.
Not just physical body, but shells. And if you want to be cracked open, turn on a song that brings you to a memory.
Yes.
That'll crack you open faster than anything. And people don't even recognize, because they're so used to, they'll be sitting in their car and they've had a breakup, or they're dreaming about their history, and all of a sudden a song comes on and all the memories come flooding back, and there's tears flowing, and they don't realize that's a healing process.
Yeah.
Something's healing in them. It's not just the song. It is so much more. As you're sharing, it is so much more.
Yeah.
So I became a professional singer
Ah, fantastic.
And I did that on stage for quite a long time, just as a younger woman. And I would try to touch people through the music. I didn't get too far. I wasn't the best singer in the world. I was a good singer, but I wasn't the best. But I have to say that it was my means to kind of open up pathways for me. So I understand what you're saying. It's like it opened up pathways.
Well, and using your voice back then to touch people and using your voice now to touch people, it's all so interwoven, isn't it?
It is.
We don't always see it at the time. It's only really when we've traveled a little bit through our life that we can see the breadcrumb trail that leads us. But no, it's also connected.
Yes. It's like mediumship. Mediumship is connected to all of us. It makes sense. We just don't want it to make sense because we're afraid of it. I mean, how can it possibly, make sense? But it does. The spirit world is not the author of confusion. They're the author of understanding and clarity. And so when we understand that the spirits that are helping us are the author of that, we can open up ourselves to mediumship, and everyone has the ability to connect in. I teach this beautiful mechanism. I think it's a beautiful mechanism. It's called awareness, acceptance, and action. You become aware that something's changed in the room. Like this room cooled down massively as we've been talking. I actually started shaking because it got so cold. And I'm aware of that. So I know there's spiritual things going on in the room as we speak. And they become aware, we're aware. And they go, oh, she's aware. And then we accept it. I accept something's changed in this room. I accept that there's something here. And they go, she's accepting it. And the action is just trust. I trust what I get, what I receive. And what that means is, we get a message, like if you get a message from the Z's or I get a message from someone in spirit, we go, well, that's what I think they'd say, because we're so used to hearing them, right? And instead of doing that, saying thank you for that message, that's what we do. That's what's different than people out there, is that we actually click into that gratitude and say, I trust this as best I can as a human. I'm having a human experience too, we all are. And once they go, they're going to trust this. I'm going to come this way every time. This is how I'm going to reach them. And so, for me, even with music, it took me to that, because I would hear music and I would go, I'm hearing music in my head. I know I'm hearing it in my ears too. I know I am, even though I'm not playing anything. And that would lead me to the next step, which I'm just going to accept they're showing me music right now, and then trusting that. And they taught me through that how to expand myself.
It's interesting. I've said this over the years, that mediumship to me is possibly currently the most important mainstream doorway into spirituality. Because as I notice people who are not spiritually minded or haven't necessarily investigated themselves, the loss of a loved one, and the fact that that loved one has gone to this other realm and that they can reach them through going to that realm. And of course, as we make contact with another realm, we start to tap into the realm ourselves. I've always thought that's the power of mediumship, because I've seen it with relatives. We lost my father 5 years ago now, almost 5 years ago. And one of my relatives, who is not particularly open to spirituality or self-growth before, has become very interested in all of the signs, the specific bird she has an association with around my father. And so it's been lovely for me to witness, this is a way in for you that's different to the way in myself and a couple of other family members took. But I've noticed that all these years I've been doing my work, that mediumship is such an important, safe bridge for people to start to encounter the idea that we are more than just this human identity. And that's why I think it's such important work.
It is. And I have people come in and their arms are crossed and they've got grouchy, crunched up faces, and they go, my wife made me come here. I don't really believe in this. And they walk out shedding massive tears and saying, I can't not believe this. You couldn't have known those things. It's like when you were talking about your father, my lower intestines started hurting me. I know there's something to do with that. There's something about that. There's a reason why I got that feeling for a second. So everything, and I'm not asking, I'm just saying, everything makes sense. It's just a matter of allowing it to come in. And the healing mechanism that you see, so they go from absolutely not, this is crazy, to, but the fact that they sat down in the room, regardless, tells me that they're actually curious. They just may not recognize it as curiosity. They actually want it to be real. They want to believe in that there's more than what we are. We all do. Our souls require that we have that want, that need to believe in something greater than ourselves. And so that's the beauty of having them come in the room, because there's something in them that wants to believe greater than what they are just in this shell, just like you said. And that expansion, you know. I believe this is an experiential place. We come here to experience. Because if you had never seen the ocean ever in your journey, and I told you all about it, yes, you'd understand it, but you would not know it till you rolled in the waves and tasted the salt air and put your feet in the sand and felt that cold chill that you get when you step into it. I mean, all those experiences that we get to have in the human body. And so I always understood why we came here, because people say to me, why would I come here to have this pain? And I say, if you understand the immensity of the fact that you get to have a gamut of these experiences, that you, having a baby, holding your baby for the first time, kissing, loving, getting married, having a partner, whatever it is, that beautiful joy that comes. But with that comes some real pain, because you can't have one without the other. You wouldn't appreciate one, and you couldn't grow. And if you were told that and it lasted that long, would you turn that down? Because I wouldn't, you know, if I could feel the experiences. So that's why we come here, and in that our soul, you know, does this expansion. So we come for the experience and the expansion. Our soul doesn't need the expansion, it craves the expansion. It craves change and it craves growth. And that's what they taught me. And I know, you know, I'm very clear that this doesn't go with me when I leave, that my heart is a mini brain that has, you know, 40,000 neurons, and it has the ability to have memory and learning capacity, and what I need goes with my soul, seats in my heart, and what I need goes with that. And so the rest is junk, you know, because we take in everything. Our subconscious takes in every single thing, every movement, everything. We don't need all that necessarily, but certainly I need those lessons and the growth factor.
Yeah. Beautiful, beautifully said. And the Z's are always saying, if you feel like you're on the wrong planet at the wrong time, but you're still alive, get curious as to why, because it's very easy to take you off the planet. It's very easy to leave the planet. And they always say, you know, when you pass, you will want to come back because of the specialness of this experience. So there's nothing else like it, which is sometimes not always welcome information when that's come out at certain workshops, but it's so important for all of us to remember that, and to I think continue to cultivate practices and community and purpose that helps support us living in as high a vibration as possible as much of the time as we're capable of doing. Because of course, life is its own wave, and you know, it's going to take us up and down. Yeah.
But you know, I understand, as I know you do, why people don't know why they would want to come back here. If you think about the grief that they're in when they're saying that. When we're in our happy times, we're like, oh, I love life, you know? And then grief comes. And grief is the lowest of vibrational energies outside of hate, because it's so painful. And so I wouldn't, in the midst of my grief, I wouldn't want to come back either. And I've had plenty of it. But as I work through it, I realize my resilience and the power of me and the empowerment I have internally. And that shifts my feelings about that completely.
You mentioned earlier that you've, you know, lost a few of your family members to suicide. And I'm curious, not just with those family members, but with anyone else in your immediate realm who has passed, do you have experiences with them on a personal level? Do they come and see you afterwards, given you're so open to this? Or is it a little more fuzzy when it's close to you?
Depends. So my mother, I have a very hard time because it's so painful for me. It hasn't been that long. Time as we speak time, there's no time there. So for me, it hasn't been that long. But my brother came to me before he passed. So he was, for 3 days, they hadn't found him. And he kept coming to me. So I was downstairs and I heard, Susan, because that's how he'd call my name. And I thought, that's weird. And I ran upstairs and covered my head. I didn't want anything to do with it. And I was an adult. And then the next day he was beside me standing by my bed, and I didn't want to recognize it. And I said, go away, which is what I did when I was little. Go away. And he did. And the third night, he was at the end of my bed and he pulled me literally out of my body. And he took me back to the yellow brick road. And he had a conversation with me. And he told me that he'd always be with me, that he would help me, that I was going to help people with what happened to him, which people started coming to me right after that had suicides. And it just kept flowing. And then he went to walk away and he said, I'll always be with you. And it was like, you know, the Michael Jackson, where he's walking on the path and it lights up?
Yes.
That's what it felt like to me, like the yellow brick road. But it was light. All this light came flooding in, and it was shining on this path. And he started to walk away. And I said, "Wait, have you met God?" And he goes, "I have to go now." And I go, "Wait, have you met?" And I kept saying, "Terry, tell me." And he wouldn't say it. And then he turned and he kept walking. And then I was like sucked back into my body, and it was so real. The next day at 10 a.m., I got the phone call that my brother had passed and that he had died by suicide, and that they had found him and that he had been gone for 3 days.
And when you came back to your body, so before the phone call, but after the experience of being with him, do you remember how you felt when you got popped back into your body? Did you have any feelings of?
The only thing I really remember is waking up my husband saying, "I can go to sleep now." I was in a completely different realm. And I still didn't accept it in. I still didn't feel like my brother had passed. I thought I was having near-death experience or something. I don't know what I thought, but it wasn't that he had passed. Yeah. And then, of course, the next day, it dawned on me, oh my gosh, I know exactly where he is. I know exactly what he's doing, and he took me back, you know. But he said one thing to me that confused me. He said, I never have to feel that way again. And he flashed me on some difficulties that he had had. And I thought, that's a strange comment to say from the spirit realm, because he will feel that way again at some point. But I think what I understand now is he meant that exact feeling, that he wasn't going to have to go through that experience again. He had already gone through it, that he would have a new, fresh experience, but not that one.
Interesting. And I don't know how much this has been an area that you've looked into, but one of the things the Z's have talked about regarding death and when we first pass over is that we go through this processing period where we aren't completely free of our human identity and our human life. We may be wrapping up and still in contact with certain lessons or certain energies, and that can, for some people, last as long as 6 months in Earth time. It just depends how quickly they process through it and out of it. So I wonder if some of that was his human consciousness, because that may have been one of the things he was trying to escape from. How long ago was that?
It was about 35 years ago.
Right, and you became an official medium about 20 years ago.
Yes.
Even though you were doing it before then through your therapy sessions, but not legitimately through your, you know what I mean? The gift was already there.
Right.
You were already helping people with grief.
Yes, and so 3 years later, my other brother died by suicide. And he had tried many attempts. And so I was just waiting for the phone call, like I said earlier, and it was extremely painful. But he did not come and visit me. And I saw him later on in an experience with my father in the room of heart's desires. So I had a brain tumor, and so I had an experience with that. But everything in my journey, I smile, not because it's not important, but because it is. It is everything that creates who I am. And I'm grateful for it in some form. In my humanness, I'm not. I'm like, why? Yeah. Why me? I'm like everybody else. But in every other way, I'm grateful for the experiences. With my mother, that was 16 years ago. It seems like yesterday. I say it wasn't long ago because it seems like yesterday. That pulled me down to my knees. That was the one that I didn't know if I'd get back up. And I remember, and I say this to people, this is a great way to help yourself heal and feel the love of them, is I remember wrapping my arms around myself and rocking and saying, I know you love me more than anything, over and over. I was chanting it because I didn't think I'd get up, literally, physically get up. And I felt this rush of love, the same rush of love I felt when I was there. Only time on this planet I felt it. And I stood up and I went about my day, and I still grieved that I was able to function. The goal in this journey is to be present. Life's in session, be present. And to know where you are in that presence. So if I'm in my kitchen making spaghetti and I start to go off into the future or the past, and I start to get into that energy of pain, I tell my grieving people, come back to where your feet are. Yeah. You can still feel the grief, but know where you are. You're not back there, you're here. And bring yourself literally back. Where are you? I'm in the kitchen. I'm, mantra yourself back to where you are, so that you're not projecting, what if I lose my next child, then I won't be a mom, or what if, whatever it is that you're projecting out there that's causing and creating this fear base in you, come back to where you are. Be in session with life. And when you do that, you're able to heal. And that's what I did. I was in session at that moment with that pain. And I found my solution through them and being present in that moment. And I continued to grieve. I grieve now. I started crying just saying it. I love her, and I wanted better for her than that. To be alone in that. That's what tortures or harms me internally. But I also know she wasn't alone. No one dies alone. No one. They don't cross alone. They don't transition alone. And that's peace for me.
Yeah, and you were one of her bright lights. You were one of her bright lights on earth. That's very clear to me here.
Thank you.
You were one of her big bright lights on earth.
She's extremely close to me. She called me her angel.
Yeah, that's what I just got very clearly. You made her life on earth easier, even though her life on earth wasn't easy. Yeah. And that's a soul path that some come in for. And it's interesting that you end up, like many sensitives, intuitives, light workers, in a family where some of the difficulties are high, and often healers have that initiation in their early life. It might not come through your family of origin, but this story shows up again and again and again with all the different kinds of healers I speak to. Something early in life that's quite challenging, quite difficult. It's its own rite of passage. And speaking of rites of passage, Infinite Life, Infinite Lessons, an amazing title. And, we've just had, I could talk to you for a lot longer than we really have in linear time, but we've just had a little drive-by of some of your personal experiences and also heard about some of the work that you've done. But I know that this book is a compilation of some personal experience, things that you've seen and witnessed and heard working with people. I'm curious, I know this is your first book and it just came out in hardback last year and it's coming into paperback this year. What was your intention, if you had one, with writing this? Because sometimes the intention reveals itself later for people, but what was your intention here?
I have to be honest, I was in my kitchen and I heard it's time to write a book, and I looked up and I said, are you crazy? I don't write. I'm not a writer. And they said, it's time. So I called Megan, who you've met, and I said, I have to stop everything. I have to write a book. And she said, what? And I said, I have to write a book. Once I started writing, I recognized that my intention was to share in the depths of my soul, to reach others in the depths of theirs, so that they could heal and know that no matter what we go through on this journey, we can thrive and we can heal and we can grow and we can expand because of it, not in spite of it. So what I put the byline is wisdom from the spirit world on living, dying, and the in-between. Because there's so much more to this than just what we're doing right now, or just, what we're doing in an hour, or just, there's so much more to living our journey.
Yeah.
And so that's what it ultimately became, a labor of pain, not a labor of love. I have to be honest, it threw me back into all that pain again, but ultimately became a labor of love as I grew in it and expanded more.
How long did it take you to write the book? What was the process?
This is the crazy part. It took 6 months. So that's impossible, right? They wrote it. I was just, channeling it out. I really believe that with my own story. I didn't spiritually bypass in there. I talked about my pain a lot and the things that I experienced, but also I know that in that 6-month time frame, they were already setting up what was going to happen, because 2 weeks after putting it out there, a literary agent grabbed it, and like 3 weeks or 4 weeks later, I was with Hay House, and I thought, it's impossible. I'm not a writer. And they say to me, you are now. And I go,
exactly.
Yay! This is awesome. I can't believe it.
That's great.
Yeah,
That's
because
great.
This is why it's so awesome. Lee, you know this, because you go through it. When someone writes or calls me or goes online and puts something that says, I don't know if I would have survived without this information. This has changed my life. I've read it 5 times and I can actually move forward from the loss I've had. It's unreal.
Yeah.
Like, you can't believe that something you put in with pen and paper could possibly have that kind of impact, number one, but also that these people are healing from reading it through your own experience of pain. They're healing. Because if I can get through it, I know they can, because I'm just another human being, doing life. Spiritual being. Human spiritual being.
Yeah. No, I understand what you mean. That's fantastic. I'm just curious. You said 6 months. How many hours a day were you writing?
Well, the hard part was getting it ready to go out, because I had to rewrite stuff all the time. But I think I was writing 3 hours a day, maybe.
Wow.
And not every day.
Yeah.
But I could write a chapter in a moment. It was once I'd start a chapter, I just couldn't put it down. So I would finish it in 3 hours a chapter. And in actuality, they changed very little. They didn't change any subtitles. They didn't change any chapters. They changed very little, asked me to change very little. It was more correction of verbiage than it was anything, and putting things in order.
Yeah.
But it just flowed.
Beautiful. Beautiful. And now it's about to have its next life in paperback. And I also know you are just getting in position to write your second, I think, from when we spoke earlier.
I'm on chapter 6.
That's great.
Yeah, and it's about healing. So I believe that the soul is never broken. It feels the pain that we experience, because it's meant to expand and grow and become more for it. But it doesn't get damaged. It's not ruined. It is our one place we can go for healing. And so I'm writing a book about that. I'm writing a book about how to tap into your soul source for, I'm calling it so far, infinite healing. Because I really believe that it's there for us. And if I go inward to heal, and I work with my soul, I heal so much quicker. And that doesn't mean I don't have help from outside, because I do, because that's part of my soul source.
Yeah.
Is what they bring to me to utilize. But yeah, that's the goal.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Well, it has been wonderful to talk to you, and thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing of yourself. I know as you were sharing some of your stories and some of your own life experiences, I could feel, as you can, people watching and resonating. And there's one question I would like to end with, because of what I felt when you were talking about your own journey with grief, which, as we know, is so personal and different for everybody, but it is also the thing that can usually take us to our knees. And I call it like the tower moment in our life, because in my 2 biggest experiences of grief, they were tower moments for me, with everything I thought I knew or understood. Anyone who resonated with that moment and hasn't yet got your book or any other resources that will support them, what advice would you give them if they're in that moment right now where they're on the floor, they don't yet know if they can be functional again because they're in that unfunctional place. But when they heard you say it, a light went off inside them and there's a little bit more strength now, but now they're wondering, what should I do next? How can I continue to find my way to be functional again?
The beautiful thing about grief is it finds you. It guides you. Grief is, it's in the corner doing push-ups, right? Waiting for you to be vulnerable. That's that tower moment. There it is, the push-ups, you're vulnerable, and boom, here it comes. You know, I'm in the grocery store, I start sobbing when I'm looking at a can of beans. And what's that about, right?
Yeah.
Because I just lost my mom or something. And you have to allow that. So I tell them, go and allow it. Don't be afraid of grief. Grief is not your enemy. Grief is your healing mechanism from loss. See, we hear the word grief and we think instantly it's the enemy. But I see grief as that healer word. And if I were to put a subtitle underneath grief, it would be love, peace, search out, get help. It would be all the things that would guide me into ridding myself of the agony of grief. So I find grief as my friend now. I make friends with it. And I say to myself, you know, and it takes time. It doesn't happen overnight. Believe me, when I tell you, I'm really aware it takes time. But once you shake hands with it and say, okay, I'm not going to run from you. As they told me, what you try to control controls you, and what you run from chases you. So face it, when you step into your grief, when you step into your pain and you face it, you will find that you can heal anything. That it's in you. You're empowered to do that healing.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Susan. A real pleasure to be with you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I had such a good time. Thank you, Lee, for having me.
Thank you. Thank you everyone for tuning in on this episode, and you can get Susan's book, Infinite Life, Infinite Lessons. It's available everywhere now, and we will, as ever, put all links to Susan's work inside the show notes so you can go and check out more of what she's doing. Take good care of yourself, take good care of others, and we'll see you next time on Impact the World.
If you or someone you know is struggling with mental health, support is available. Confidential help is available worldwide at findahelpline.com. You are not alone.
London, are you ready for energy mastery? Who here likes the idea of a little bit of gentleness after the last few months? Yeah, me too.
Embrace your power and transform your life over a weekend of cosmic connection and soul expansion with Lee Harris.
When you come together with a focused intent to increase your energy mastery, and you do that with a group of people, incredible amplification happens. Think about how many of you, as you get older, marvel at how fast time is moving. Seize the limits of linear time to motivate you to live.
Join us for channeled wisdom, grounded teaching, soul-infused music with Devor Bozique, community participation, and connection.
Like hit my soul in a level of like, wow, these are the things that I know, I'm thinking, I'm feeling, and how is somebody who I've never met speaking so much wisdom and truth?
I just saw people, you know, their shoulders back, the light in their eyes, and the glow around their being. And I felt the same way. It's beautiful to witness.
Step into your energy mastery to reset and reconnect.
You are allowed. Create, creator, create. You never know who's going to show up. You never know what's going to be asked. You never know what's going to be focused in the room. It's the beauty of being live with each other that is its own co-creative mystery.
Energy Mastery with Lee Harris, September 13th and 14th in London.
Thank you so much for being here.
Limited seating. Reserve now.